Imagine this, you're working on a new technique and your leading hand quickly gets the hang of it, but your weaker hand just doesn't want to do the way you do. That is probably a very familiar thing for most drummers from beginners to professionals, and that's why in this video I'll give you 7 tips on how to properly train your second best hand on the drums for more flow, more control and more freedom on the kit. And of course, more speed. If you don't know me yet, my name is Andi Rode. I am a professional drummer from Germany. I also studied sports science and music education. On this channel I would like to pass my knowledge and experience from 20 years of teaching practice on to you. So whether beginner or advanced, if you want to learn how to learn drums more effectively, then you should subscribe now and feel free to browse through my channel where you already find well over 200 videos that should help you develop independently on the instrument. And we'll jump right in. The first tip starts with acceptance. Acknowledge the weakness. There is a reason for it. All we can do easily on the instrument is the result of what we have practiced. And in the same way, all problems or deficits, with a few exceptions, are a result of what we have not practiced or have practiced incorrectly. So we always have it in our own hands. And that's good news because it means you can change it. But what we mustn't do is just push ourselves harder and expect good results. This results in tension, which is the opposite of what we need to play fast and fluid. So sometimes the second hand is too weak because we expected too much of it and it never had the chance to develop reliable foundations. Your weak hand is not your enemy. You're a team. And what do you do if one team member is not yet on the same level as the others? First of all, you respect their current abilities, which in our case is simply the fact that we all have a dominant hand. In addition, the members of a team have different tasks, so our hands don't necessarily have to be able to do exactly the same on the drums. And thirdly, the solution to close the gap is, of course, you pay more attention to the weakest team member. This means that you practice more slowly with your weak hand, but longer to make the gap smaller over time. And that's why my second tip is focus more on the weak hand during the warm-up. Of course, you should warm up both hands properly. Why this is also important before practicing, I explain in another video, link here and in the description. But since you do almost everything with your strong hand in everyday life, it will already be much more active and ready when you get started practicing. So the weak hand needs more time and attention here as well. It is better than we think, but if we warm up both hands equally, it still has a deficit in the end. And over time, this turns into a belief. We perceive this difference in abilities as a given. But maybe it's just a lack in patience and a lack in understanding that the second hand needs more care. During the warm-up, you could slowly and accurately go through the techniques or exercises you practiced last time and slowly increase the tempo. This way you secure what you have learned and at the same time have a little extra training for the weaker hand. With this additional stimulation, all the exercises you do afterwards will actually work better with this hand because it is only now really awake. So this increases your progress even more. Of course, you can also choose a ready-made warm-up exercise or put it together yourself, in which your weak hand simply plays 3 times as often or 3 times as long. It is important that you then also increase the tempo over time. When a warm-up becomes routine, it loses the effect of making you awake and focused while expanding your skills. The third tip to achieve this is mirroring. You play exactly the same thing with both hands, as long as the respective exercise allows it. Even with simultaneous single strokes, there might be a substantial difference. We often focus on the leading hand. The other one is supposed to come along somehow, but it lacks sensitivity and control. Due to this uncertainty, the movements are smaller, more restrained, and at the same time often more strained. The horse jumps as high as it has to. If you're playing at the same time, there's a clear guideline and you can reduce the difference. In the next step, you alternate between these unison strokes and the weak hand playing alone until it no longer needs the training wheels. Do this exercise with single strokes first, and later you can expand it to techniques such as double strokes, or the molar technique. The next exercise seems to be the opposite, but actually continues the idea of emancipating the weak hand a little and thus strengthening it. We play it alone, but still rhythmically in the same place as it would play in context. This now challenges your timing and precision. Again, let's take single strokes in 16th notes to a metronome in quarters, where you omit the leading hand. It's difficult to play cleanly, but with a little practice it leads to much more control and precision. Even with more complex rhythms or grooves, it is worthwhile to practice the limbs individually to overcome the dependencies and focus on the weak points in order to improve them. Because you are now dealing exclusively with the weak hand, it gets more training and the gap becomes smaller. What I would also like to recommend to you is to practice the rudiments, of course. In order for them to run smoothly, each hand must play its role well. Simply tagging along does not work here. The rudiments will challenge you technically, coordinatively and sometimes rhythmically. So you have a perfect opportunity to improve the weak hand in all these areas. I've just made a very detailed video on how to go about this, so here is just one tip. Take the classic rudiments, mirror the hands if possible, and pay more attention to the weak hand by letting it then play on its own. What is also good for a weak team member is to give them more responsibility to grow into this role. A group can only run as fast as the slowest member, so let them take the lead and set the pace. This is why tip number 4 is lead with a weak hand. The simplest implementation would be to start single strokes and then simple rhythms with a weak hand and distribute them as fill-ins over the drum set. Also, we usually do new technique exercises, first with a strong hand and then, necessarily, devote ourselves briefly to the second. And because of course it is not as good as our strong hand, we give up quickly, thus increasing the gap. I think we should turn this around. Start with a weak hand. Give it a lot of time. The maximum speed it reaches is then the ceiling you want to raise over the next few days. After that, you can do it again briefly with a strong hand. It's motivating that it can probably play it faster and easier. But for most exercises and techniques, this surplus is worth much less than a good balance between the hands. What I would also highly recommend is to practice the open-handed playing. I don't play exclusively open myself, but I'm known for this way of playing, also through a few instructional videos on this topic. In open-handed playing, you lead with each hand depending on the side. For right-handers who have the hi-hat on the left, this means that they lead all the grooves there with their left hand. Since it now plays many more notes, it gets some extra training. Especially 16th note grooves with accents are a great exercise for technique and endurance. And in addition, you will gain some great coordinative skills that will give you more options on the set. So this is an absolute killer exercise that will take you further on many levels. There are some great books that you can work with for a while, or you can just do your current exercises open-handed on your own. My 7th tip is the logical consequence of the idea of demanding more of the second hand in order to give it the chance to narrow the gap. Do more with your weak hand in everyday life. It's simple and very effective. But are you really doing it? Practicing concretely with the sticks in your hand is the best. But if we do everything else with our strong hand for the remaining 14 or 15 waking hours of the day, this progress will be undermined and one-sidedness will be reinforced again. Intuitively, you just take the path of least resistance. Why should I, as a right-hander, cut the vegetables with my left hand if it takes 3 times as long? The result is worse and I could also cut myself. There is a very important reason for this. When you learn something new, from painting, writing, when we learn a new language, a new sport, to handling a new kitchen item, the strong hand is always used first and almost always used exclusively. So it is always presented with new tasks, and with that it gains the ability to acquire new skills, unlike the second hand. This means that the weak hand is not only less trained, it is also less trainable. Then we can't expect to confront it with the same tasks on the drums as the strong one and to get better just as quickly. It's similar with the open-handed playing. Why should I play something that is difficult for me when I can already do it better in the usual way? The answer lies in the question. You are missing a skill because you can always fall back on your safety net. We learn the things least for which we have an alternative with a low threshold. So you have to force yourself to leave the well-trodden path to learn new things. And in everyday training, as an open-handed playing, the following applies. As a right-hander, pretend to be left-handed for a few days, consistently, as if you had your strong arm in a cast. This is the radical cure, which is not so radical after all, because so far you have done 100% as a right-hander. If you flip it over for a few days, it's probably still over 99.9 over your lifetime, but this 1 per 1,000 will help you tremendously. Believe me, I did it myself. It will show you how big the deficit is, and at the same time how quickly it can be reduced if you switch sides for a few days. Where you can practice this wonderfully are sports where you already work one-sidedly anyway. If you do some of that, you should definitely challenge the weak side. This also prevents muscular imbalances and may even be that you make some new experiences that also make your strong side better. So this can be a real secret weapon which is actually used in professional sports, by the way. And then there are sports in which you automatically train for a balance. For example, swimming, strength training, climbing, yoga, or cross-country skiing. When someone comes to me for a private lesson and I ask them to do an exercise now with a weak hand, there is often a nervous laugh, sometimes an eye roll or even an apology. Please don't expect too much. First, why be ashamed of something we can't do yet? Why hide a deficit instead of confronting it? Especially when you obviously already know that there is one. It's probably just that. You feel caught that you haven't practiced the obvious. And secondly, it is not necessarily a weakness, but an imbalance. So you've even practiced too much. Too much with a strong hand, that is, because it was easier. But we have to go where it hurts until it is no longer unpleasant. Working on the weaknesses leads to progress the fastest. Practicing takes effort, but the feeling of growth rewards you for your determination. It is doubly liberating. Taking responsibility for the weakness is honest and gives a feeling of self-efficacy. And working on it will liberate your skills on the drums. If you want to improve, you should be measured by your weak points in order to be able to improve them. A chain is only as strong as its weakest link. The nice thing is that that's where you can win the most in a short time. These 7 tips should help you on your way to this goal. But we will never achieve complete balance, and it wouldn't even make sense. Like on any instrument, there is a division of labor between the limbs. Not every member of the group has the same task, and that's why a team is not as good as the worst player, but as good as each player is involved according to their strengths and weaknesses. A good team is more than the sum of the skills of the individual people. So, neither ignore the weakest player, nor force them to somehow keep up with the strongest. Respect, patience and individual support, that's what gets us ahead. Constantly work on not letting the gap between the hands get too big, because this will also ensure that you have more confidence, which you will express through your playing. In addition, we need a secure foundation, because we may not yet know what we want to be able to play in a few years, but in the end, it's about nothing hindering you on the way to your musical goal. And as long as the hands can implement what you want to play, everything is fine. What I have shown you here can of course also be transferred to foot technique, especially if you want to play double bass drum where the legs should play quite evenly. But you can also check out my playlist on foot technique, where I also have 2 detailed videos on double bass drumming, including a practice plan as a bonus PDF. My big goal with this channel is to help you make progress on the drums as independently as possible. If you would like personal support, then get in touch with me for a private online lesson. There we can really take our time and I can adjust completely to you and your personal goals. Just hit me up on social media. And if this video helped you, please give it a like and write something in the comments. With these little things, you can actually help out a lot, because the algorithm notices that the video seems to be interesting and suggests it to others. This is an easy way to support this channel. If you want more, check out my Patreon page for more exclusive content for you. See you in the next video. Until then, take care and bye bye.